What's happening everyone, and in this video I will be talking about the things you have to pay attention to when buying a new MacBook based on my bad experience in the past. Let's begin. Okay, so I bought this MacBook Pro a couple of months ago. It's actually the 2017 model, it's the 13-inch. It's actually without the touch bar. Back then it was possible to get one. Now they completely removed that option, but anyways, it's packed with two Thunderbolt 3 ports on the left side and one headphone jack on the other. I even went ahead and upgraded the RAM to 16 gigs for video editing. It's all cool. The Premiere Pro, the software that I use, actually recommends you to go ahead and update or use at least 16 gigs of RAM, so yeah, it works. But a thing I didn't pay enough attention to, and that's also the reason why I'm making this video, was the actual storage. With the intention to only use this computer to get stuff done, like to get projects and everything, like for example in Photoshop or videos in Premiere, and I just didn't want to store anything, any kind of big files on this computer. With this intention, I bought the lowest 128 gig MacBook Pro. I thought it would be enough, and I still think that today, that 128 gigs wouldn't be that big of a deal besides the things I will be talking about. So I only would like to use it like to install needed software for like the Adobe Photoshop and Premiere Pro and some other stuff, and also some necessary files that I need to have there, but I wouldn't want to store there anything large. Also, I wanted to edit videos right from the SD card, which works without a problem. But there is one very important thing that I forgot about. Actually, there are two essential things or factors that play a huge role when it comes to the storage. The first are the scratch disks, and the second is the system storage. So let me go over these things. So what exactly are the scratch disks? It is a space on your hard drive dedicated for temporary purposes, mostly used by software like Photoshop. Like I said, the management is dynamic, which means that it's getting removed and it's just not possible to store there any files permanently. So every time you want to work on a project, you have to make sure that part of your hard drive is actually free for Photoshop or other software to use it while doing certain project. And the bigger the project is, of course, the more storage it needs. So obviously you need to have enough storage to work. Once I was working on a very large file, it was actually a picture in a Photoshop with a width of more than 2 meters, and it was just too big. And I couldn't even export it because I got a pop-up saying your scratch disks are full. What should I have done? Delete something else when I don't have there anything at first place? Or should I have removed some other software like Premiere, for example, when I need it? It's actually a very tricky situation because you think that it should work. You have that 1 gig or 2 gigs for the project and for the file to be saved on your drive, but you don't have enough virtual storage to work with. What's even worse, that I wasn't even able to save the project as PSD file. That was mainly because it was larger than 2 gigs and Photoshop doesn't allow you to do so. Or as an alternative to, I wasn't able to save it as TIFF file because it just didn't let me to do so for some reason. Obviously the reason is not enough storage, whether that is to save the actual file or to use in a scratch disk. So now I was stuck with a project that I was working on for a couple of hours and it's just gone, and I can start over again once I figure out the way how you can do it with that storage. That feeling is very intimidating. You may say that there is also another option because Photoshop allows you to use external drives as scratch disks, but it doesn't work the way you would expect. I grabbed a random external drive and Photoshop didn't recognize it for some reason. Plus, with only 2 USB-C Thunderbolts, it's kind of a mess with the adapters and everything. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so if you would like to, you can open up Photoshop. While using the Option key, you can open up the Photoshop and it will ask you to choose and pick the scratch disks. So there is that, but also if you have opened the Photoshop app, you can go to the preferences and find it there, simply change it. But like I said, it just didn't recognize the actual hard drives. See what I'm talking about? Even though you don't really plan on having like many photos or many songs stored on your drive on your MacBook, you think that 128 gigs is okay. even though you have to pay attention to the fact that you don't really have the option to use the entire 128. Of course, you only have like 120 gigs, but this is some regular stuff. Of course, you don't plan on having some movies or anything, but since you don't have that virtual space to work with, you're not able to get things done. And I paid a decent amount of money for this computer. It was about 1700 euros, and it's actually not working the way I wanted it to work. It's all fast, it's actually speedy. The 128 gigs is obviously SSD, it works well, but it's just not enough. It doesn't matter that I have a decent graphic and that I have upgraded the RAM, it still sucks because you're not able to finish a project you started with. I'm sorry to interrupt the video right here, but I just wanted to say that if you are interested in this kind of content and this kind of videos, then it would be a really great thing if you clicked the subscribe button, which means that you will be always updated when there's a new video. So make sure you do that, and let's continue with the video. So, the second thing I wanted to talk about, besides the scratch discs, if you don't really plan on using Photoshop a lot or some other similar software which requires you to have a lot of, like a big amount of the scratch discs, you also have to pay attention to the fact that the storage on a MacBook is kind of tricky, because I know that there are many people that have the problem that if you go to the about your Mac section and to the storage, you can see that system on my storage, the part of that takes the most. Actually, 93 gigs is only taken by the system, which means that I'm only left with just 30 gigs, and this is mostly full. You can see that I have only 6 gigs available. It just really sucks, you know? I know that this storage consists of some backups that you can sort of remove, but you have to go through a process which isn't something that you want to do every week or so, and it's just kind of annoying. I just looked up a couple of ways how you can delete it. Not every single one of them worked, but this is another factor you have to pay attention to. This kind of storage is not the only problem for me, but for too many people out there using a MacBook. So you really want to pay attention to how big the storage on your brand new MacBook will be. You can see that only I use like 11 gigs of apps and also 5 gigs of documents, which means that I literally don't have anything on this computer, and still I have nothing to do with this. And now you may be like, obviously 128 gigs isn't much, why did you just not buy more? But storage upgrades from Apple are pretty pricey, to be honest. The prices of the actual MacBooks have dropped since I bought mine, but still, $200 if you live in the US for additional 128 gigs seem to be too much when you're able to get a 1TB SSD for $100 and simply install it in your MacBook. But that would interfere with the warranty, so right now I'm stuck in a tight situation where I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with this. I can either use some external drives, some external storages that I will plug to the MacBook, and it will look just terrible, and it also means another expenses for already a pretty pricey MacBook, or I can simply unscrew the rear part of that laptop and simply install another SSD, but like I said, that would probably break the warranty. Let me know if you already had this kind of problem before and how you plan on solving this, or what you do in order to get out of this bad situation. I just personally thought that it would be so much better to simply spend the money and upgrade